This is the Gen Y Leaders Podcast. Welcome to the Gen Y Leaders Podcast, where we guide millennials to become the next generation of business leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Eric Huey, and multiple times a month, we bring you interviews from high-performing millennials who are challenging perceptions and changing expectations of our generation. Our mission is to help you overcome fear, take action, and go confidently in the direction of your dreams. It's time to start preparing now, mainly because 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day, which will create a vacuum of career opportunities that you've been waiting for. Will you be ready? Rich, welcome to the Gen Y Leaders Podcast.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If you could, Rich, just start us off. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'd like to kind of, start with a little story, right? I actually, I got my start in product management back in, almost 10 years ago. And it really came out as a result of me trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had the combination of computer engineering and digital production and just the ability to lead and, kind of tried to find where that would take me. And I found out that, this kind of role, this responsibility of leading product development, product management was the perfect fit. And I actually tried to get started. I got a job at Johnson & Johnson. I started in IT, but, I had this stigma that people didn't believe that I could do product management because I was, working in the server room and I did, infrastructure and databases versus, when you think about product managers, you think about, sometimes you think about they're building the latest cool apps and things like that. So I had to, overcome that, by kind of taking a few steps backwards, but in order to go forward. So I managed to do that and built up my career there and started working at great companies. I got a chance to work at Disney, do some amazing products there, led teams, had, $10 million budgets, do some really great things there and, deliver some positive returns for them. And then I kind of I took a turn a little bit. I went into a different direction. Instead of trying to continue to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak, I decided to kind of jump into this entrepreneurship thing that everyone talks about and everyone says great things about. And for me, I've always wanted to build my own companies or lead my own teams of to kind of develop that financial independence. And sure enough, I ended up kind of doing that, and it's been great so far. I mean, it's a journey, but it's led to me where I'm at right now, which is essentially running a private equity firm. And what we do is we raise money from investors. We have a thesis that we essentially expect to deliver to our, as far as returns go, and within a specific strict criteria. Mm-hmm. And if we do that, if we, deliver on that commitment, that promise, then we as the investment fund or firm gets a nice percentage, basically like a performance. That's kind of the business model there. Okay. So it's crazy how everything, and we'll obviously go into like how that even happened because I know there's a big story there.
Definitely. Yeah. I look forward to talking about the private equity side more, but I do want to step back and talk a little bit about your experience because I think it's important because, by all accounts, you were successful and you worked for some huge companies. You said it yourself, Johnson & Johnson, Walt Disney Company, anyone who else is looking at your resume is like, man, this guy has got it. He's climbed the ladder at each of these companies. Like, what was your mindset at the time where you kind of had the fork in the road of like, well, I could go down this road and climb the ladder, or I could go out on my own? What was the deciding factor?
I'll say this. It was me taking some time to reflect, actually. So when I turned 30 years old, right? The infamous 30, right? I took a really long, hard look at just where I was. And I asked myself, is this where I want to be? Mm-hmm. Right. And I I said, if I could design the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, where would I want to be? What would I want to be doing?
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment when I started to write stuff down, in the different areas, in finance and fitness and family and faith and fulfillment, all these things, I realized that the path that I was kind of on wasn't going to lead me there, or at least it was going to take a lot longer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, in a way, get there a little bit faster, knowing that there's a wealth of information out there in the on the internet, and people who have succeeded, who have done it, and it's just a matter of finding out those people and learning from them. That was kind of the lesson in itself of, reflect, figure out what you want, and write it down, and to the point where exactly the number and the color of the car and the house, and like how many rooms and like what it's gonna take. Like, no, it's
Right.
serious. It was that level of detail that really got me thinking, am I gonna get there, and how am I gonna get there? And so, it was that 30 when I turned 30. It was that reflection.
Yeah, it's amazing that you took that time. It's interesting concept, because I mean, it seems easy to take that time and do what you did and reflect, but it is actually very hard if you sit down and try to make the time and plan out your vision for how you want to live your life and what you want it to look like. And I would encourage more people to do it. I think a lot of the entrepreneurs I've spoke with on this show have done the exact same thing you just mentioned, and told the story about there, as far as, really sit down and just evaluate it. Like, are you living the life that you want to live? Are you going to work happy? Do you need to become an entrepreneur? Take in all those factors and really evaluate them.
Yeah. And I will add one thing, because one of the things that you'll learn about me, and hopefully your listeners will learn about me, is that I am the type of person that likes to give actionable advice and steps.
Yeah.
So me just saying that I did it, some of your listeners would be like, oh, I'm never, oh, okay, cool, he did it, right?
Yeah.
But I want you guys and the listeners who are listening to kind of see it. And I'll send it. I'll give you guys you can put in the show notes the actual document that I created, because not only does it hold me accountable, but it also can show as a template or as a model for other people to say, look at what you can just kind of use as a reference point. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's very valuable. My technical side kind of speaks about this a lot, but when you think about like artificial intelligence, right? All it is taking a lot of data, processing it, you're training it, and then therefore being able to use that for whatever predictive, purposes, right? And if I can create some data to give to you guys, to the listeners, or to whoever, to kind of use as that training data, to then, for you to develop your own, data set and learn off of, so that way you can predict the future, then by all means, let's do it. So that's, I'll offer that for you guys.
Yeah. Love that analogy. Yeah. We appreciate that greatly. So thanks for that. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes for anyone who wants to access that.
Yeah.
One interesting point before we move on to the private equity side is, I've interviewed people that have worked at big companies like you. People have been on the show from Facebook and Amazon and Google. And they all talk about this kind of like imposter syndrome type feeling, to where like, no matter how much you succeed and how high you get on the corporate ladder, that there's always this kind of a sense of imposter syndrome, to where you kind of feel like a target's on your back and that you'll never be good enough. Did you have any feelings like that, and did that factor into your reason to leave?
I have felt like that even before being at these big companies.
Yeah.
Just to get a little bit more personal, for me growing up, I struggled a lot with reading and writing, to the point where I didn't know this at the time, but I had dyslexia.
Wow.
And I'd always felt like it was an imposter whenever I was, among people, because I felt like I wasn't at the same level as everyone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that really did tarnish my confidence, my ability to kind of think on my own, because I was just always thinking about other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to just, get better at thinking laterally. And that's actually one of the things that people say about dyslexics, is that they're able to just kind of think differently, right? So if I feel this way, how can I get out of it, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that the more that I got control over my mind and my body, I wasn't feeling like an imposter anymore, right? Because I had an identity. I was me. There was no one else who I was trying to compare myself to. It was just is who I am, and this is what I'm trying to do. And so that's another piece of advice. If you guys are, curious, is how do you take control of your mind and your body? And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, the simple things like, working out and being healthy, right? You're controlling your body
Yeah.
and putting it into tip top shape, right? For your mind, I actually use this device called the Muse headband. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if you've heard of it.
No, I don't.
It's a device that you can put on your head, and it actually measures your brainwave frequencies,
Wow.
and it can give you the feedback by listening, by you having earphones, and it'll tell you, you'll hear when you're in a very uh, high beta state, meaning your mind is very active and it's thinking.
Yeah.
This device will actually, it'll show or you'll hear like rain, like really like loud rain. And
Huh.
then whenever you're in a alpha, very creative and calm state, you'll hear these birds chirping,
Wow.
right? And so I have used that as a way, again, going to the data analysis, but like uh, as a way to kind of build up a set of data
Yeah.
in my brain to understand how do I, and get the feedback, right? The feedback loop of knowing how am I feeling right now.
For
Oh,
sure.
and I get the birds, I know that I'm in a calm state, right?
Yeah.
Or I hear the rain, it's like, okay, my mind's going everywhere. So that
That's
ability
crazy.
to understand and control, in a way, your mind or your state is really how I started to overcome the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that is unreal. I didn't even know a product like that existed. That sounds like some Tony Stark level stuff.
Uh, yeah, it's there. It's you can find out. I think you just go to like choosemuse.com, and I'm
Okay.
not affiliated with them at all.
Sure.
I love the product. I use it as part of my morning routine.
Yeah, that's cool. So is it kind of like track your biorhythms then? Is like even day to day as far as like peak performance hours to where like you have good
It
flow of work and different stuff like that that you can track?
it can, and
Cool.
I actually have an older model, but the newer models can just kind of stay over your head. But usually people use it for meditating, right? Because you're trying to meditate, you're trying to get into that alpha, calm state,
Right.
and constantly when we're trying to meditate, maybe you have thoughts or we have other things going on, and you may think you're meditating, but you're you're really just there, which is fine.
Right.
I think there's nothing wrong with taking the time to try to meditate, and maybe you're not kind of in that state, but it's still a good way to be aware. I think that's really what I'm trying to get at, is that awareness. When you have awareness, you can start to control things.
For sure. Great advice. Thanks for that. So let's transition back to the private equity side of the business, or your other business that you have, your main business, I guess.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, just to kind of start us off at the beginning there, that you mentioned the model kind of as far as if your investors succeed, then you succeed. Is that kind of
Mhm.
the normal private equity model, or is there different? How'd you go about, setting that standard?
Yeah. So, the typical uh, private equity, or let's just say funds in general. I'll kind of
Mhm.
educate some of you guys if you've never been familiar. A fund is essentially a vehicle of taking other people's money
Mhm.
and putting it into a specific investment asset class, right? Sometimes people will, pool people's money, and they'll invest it on behalf of someone else. And so that investment firm or fund is essentially paid by the ability to deliver those expected returns,
Mhm.
right? And there's a certain kind of percentage that each fund is usually different, but you can usually break up the percentage by the returns. So for
Yeah.
example, let's say you choose an asset class that can deliver pretty consistently a 15% return on your investment.
Mhm.
If you have established this fund that says, okay, for every 10% that we actually hit and we deliver to you investors, you get all of that,
Yeah.
right? But for the 11th and 12th percentile, we get a percentage of the whole pie, right? Because we delivered as we promised,
Yeah.
right?
Above and
And
beyond.
then on the 13th and beyond, then then maybe we do it like an 80-20 split. And then after the 20th or anything higher than 20, right, it's a 50-50 split.
Okay.
So it's in the best interest of the fund managers or the people who run these funds to find the opportunities that will deliver strong returns that can, pay back the investors. And as a result of that, they can get paid very handsomely as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for educating us on that. So I think everybody's of the mind nowadays that, you should do business with people you know, like, and trust. So I'm curious on that trust component for you, as far as, you coming from a different background. I'm not sure if you can speak to your business partners or partners. How have you guys transitioned from maybe previous careers, or especially you, into private equity, and then, built trust so quickly to be successful with people, large sums of people's money?
Yeah. I would say that trust is definitely something that, is what all of this stands on. Right. And one of the things that I've learned early on, especially even at these bigger companies, is that everything is a relationship. Yeah. Right. And you should always be thinking about other people in the way that you maybe would think about your family, the ones that you really, really care about. Sometimes your family, sometimes you don't always care. But no, it's really considering everyone almost like a family member, and to the point where you understand, or you actually remember their kids' names, and what they love to do, and you realize that they like soccer, but they're struggling with this one move, and it's like, whoa, I mean, I know a coach who may be able to help that person. Yeah. Right. And making that connection, giving, right, more so than just asking. Yeah. So that's what I do, is the relationship, the trust building comes as a result of really just getting to know people first of all, and just constantly being in that giving mindset, and then that naturally kind of revolves around, or reflects back and saying, hey, I want to help you now. Like, what can I do to help you? And that's right. Where you start to, share some of that. So it's a little bit of that. It's just, constantly I think about, I'm planting seeds in every type of relationship that I introduce myself or I talk to someone. I'm always trying to plant a seed of some sort of connection, right? I try to lead with empathy first, right? Or I lead with some sort of actually vulnerability of connection. Whether it's, I also, went through a similar struggle, right? Yeah. And then also trying to teach or share something that other person may not never have known, right? So now they kind of see me as an expert. And then eventually, sharing what are the goals that I have, right? Sure. So that way, maybe that motivates that person to want to collaborate with me in the future, right? Because if you never share what it is that you're doing as well, your goals, your motives, then you can never have something that maybe can lead to an opportunity. So that's how I usually like to do it.
Yeah. I love that mindset as far as drilling down and, being intentional, being specific in what you want and what your, the other person wants in your relationship. In the specifics of kind of your, I guess, deal flow, how do you go about finding your investors and, getting deals done with them? But then also a part two is, how do you find the deals?
Yeah. So let's start with the finding the deals part first, because that's actually the more important question. Investors and capital, as what, people always say, oh, it's hard to find money. And to a certain degree it is, but once you have the right deal and the right, way to share it and frame it, money comes to you in a way, right? So as far as the deals go, I'll talk to you about two ways that we're doing it. Okay, so number one way that we're doing it is there's two partnerships. Okay, so with Pierson Equity Group, which is essentially a real estate debt fund. So that's one of the kind of funds that I have. My partner actually identified this idea where he would go to these experienced people who have a track record and done multiple deals before, and offer to partner with them and say, hey, today you guys are, you're looking for money. You're syndicating these types of deals on your own. It's taking you a lot of time. What if we became your preferred, short-term bridge loan, short-term bridge provider. How about how would you like that?
Yeah.
And to them, they love it because they don't have to do the work of trying to find, all that capital. So, and we know we can trust because that they have the done successful deals before, that just comes to us now, right? So that's how we strategically my partner picked these experienced operators who are just constantly getting deals. Like that's what they love to do, right? So we partner with the right people, and then therefore they say, and they bring those to us. So that's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it, which is how we're doing it on the business acquisition side, it's a different fund, but the way that we're doing it for that is, in a way, it's establishing relationships with brokers and people that sell businesses. But also we've made a way to kind of scrape and find these deals off of the normal business listing sites. I don't know if you guys even knew this, but you can actually go on listings like you would go find a house for sale. You could go and find businesses for sale. Right. And you can kind of see, and does it fit your criteria and all that, right? And so there's tons of listings, but it's painful to go to every single one, and maybe all you're really looking for are the core key metrics, core key numbers. Does it fit your thesis? And so we have a way to pull all of that, put it into a central place, and have my team be able to reach out and kind of start those conversations, right? And then kind of this 2A to that is really being able to just constantly tell people like, hey, this is what we do. We acquire businesses, right? This is our thesis, is our what we look for. And sometimes you're really trying to go after the founders or at least the CEOs who've been in the trenches, so to speak, and just kind of understanding what do they want to do? What is their vision of the company? And so being able to constantly ask those questions, be curious, to the point where they're just like, hey, we like you, we want to sell to you, and how do we move forward, right? So those are like kind of the off market types of deals. And then that really parlays very nicely into what we're doing as far as the private equity space is, because there is a difference between private equity and venture capital, which there's two different types of plays when it comes to the game, right? The venture capital game is also finding opportunities, smaller startups, writing smaller checks in the hope that that one of those turns out to be 100x their money, right? And there's plenty of people who do it really well, right? And it takes time though. When it comes to what I was looking for and what I like private equity is because you spend the time, yes, to acquire a business, and it takes time. But if you've mastered the ability to do that, execute through a fund, because you just have capital ready to go, and if the seller's ready, you're ready, you close the agreement, you're good to go, right? Now you've just acquired an asset, a business that is already making money, and could be paying back to their investors, quarterly dividends because of that fact, right? So that's really, exciting, especially knowing that you're going to get something very quickly.
For sure. Do you feel like there's a certain hot industry right now as far as the business acquisition side?
Yeah, e-commerce is fairly big. SaaS companies, at least in the tech space, I would say. Most of my deals are in the tech space, whether it's internet businesses or tech businesses that, again, 3 years or more as far as maturity level. But I mean, a lot of people are doing the roll-up strategy of buying FBA, Amazon businesses, individually, and then they'll roll them up into one, very efficient, kind of master business, and then eventually try to exit that, or just keep it going, So people are doing that. Others are doing combination, like business combinations. So they're taking two different types of businesses and they're trying to merge them into one, right? So that way you kind of have two business revenue streams you're basically acquiring two revenue streams and you're putting them together. Now you got, even more.
Right.
So, that's another really interesting tactic.
For sure. I think that's wise though, to stay in your lane, so to speak, or maybe a better way to phrase it is your domain experience with all the tech and product development and software development stuff that you have in your background. I think it's wise. I mean, you just build upon the knowledge and experience you already have, and hopefully connects that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, that is definitely a very, very wise thing to do. The only reason why I started with the real estate debt fund, which I actually don't have much real estate experience.
Yeah.
But what I did is I used my ability to pitch and my ability to communicate. And I had my partner, right, who is the expert. So that way I could, frame or create this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the other questions you asked is how do you find investors, right? So you mentioned you got to find the deal first, and then once you find the deal, it's how do you frame it? How do you put it in the best light forward so that the investor sees it and says, "Wow, this is an amazing opportunity."
Yeah.
And not make them feel like you're needy, right? That you're saying, "I'm giving you the option to be a part of this," right? And it's again that
with
frame,
or without you.
Exactly. It's like, hey, if you want it in, then we'll be happy to take you. If you're not interested, that's fine with us as well. We got plenty of other people that are interested. So it's that ability to frame that I was able to bring to the real estate fund, which helped us raise 16 million for a $20 million fund. And so we're about to close that actually this week.
That's amazing. Congrats on that, man. That's huge.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. But again, it was all a byproduct of using all the experiences that I gained from working at like big companies like Disney and just, telling a great story. It's at the end of the day is you're telling a story, but you're also using data, facts. You're trying to be like one of the things that I like to do is I'll do kind of like almost like a product demo of the returns, right?
Yeah.
People are like, hey, if I put in 1 million, what would that look like? If I put in 500,000, what would that look like? And kind of in real time, be able to showcase those things, right? So that way you don't waste time, right? Everyone's time is so precious. People can usually make their call in the first 20 minutes, sometimes even first 15 minutes of anything, So those types of things have really helped. And now I'm going to use that for the private equity acquisition space to know that I know how to raise capital. I know how to find the deals. I know how to actually pick the right people to operate these things, and but still have a team, because I'm not a one-man show here. Like I can't do it all.
Yep. It's a cheesy saying, but I always go to the teamwork makes the dream work.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's way to work.
Talk a little bit about the pressures, because us as entrepreneurs, it's fun and exciting, but there's way different types of pressure as an entrepreneur compared to being an employee. So, handling $68 million, I'm sure there's a lot of pressure to that. So how do you deal with that and, overcome those, worries and fears and things like that?
Yeah. To this day, I think what, keeps me going is the fact that there's a little bit of fear of, fear of failure, right? I know I personally, I know that it's good to fail though, right? But at the same time, when you're dealing with at this level, right, this high of level, failure is your whole reputation's on the line at that point. And so that for me is, yes, it's a lot of pressure. I manage it by, like I said, some of the stuff in the morning with the meditation. I manage it by trying to have great people that I can talk to, because if you're trying to do everything on your own, it is going to just eat at you. It's gonna burn you out. It's gonna take you down. And I realize that it's great you have to have a team. And so I have a team. I have people that I can rely on. I can delegate, and kind of celebrate wins together, right? That's the other part. When if you're always thinking about pressure, and you never really appreciate the little wins, along the way, you're just going to always be stressed. So I try to let the small defeats kind of learn from it, figure out what can I do better from it, and really have a good mitigation plan for everything,
Yeah,
especially, when you're dealing with a lot more assets that you're, managing.
definitely. Yeah, I think delegation is a key tactic that a lot of people overlook, especially aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs starting out. It's like it's its whole superpower and skill set in itself. So be sure to delegate when you can for listeners out there.
Yeah. There's a whole, like, I think one of the things that helped me a lot. So I have virtual assistants. I have people, in the Philippines, and they are great at being able to take things off my plate. You give them, just, kind of an idea of what to do, and then they do it. So it's something that I recommend.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Rich, I feel like you're one of the people I could talk to all day, but don't want to kill a battery on your phone. So a couple key questions to close out here. One, what books or resources would you recommend for people trying to get into acquisition entrepreneurship or private equity? And then two, how can people get a hold of you?
So I would say, let's see, good books. As far as books in general, there's two that I recommend. One would be Flip the Script by Oren Klaff. I'm not sure if you've ever been anyone recommended that book.
Pitch Anything's been on the list a few times, but Oren Klaff.
Pitch Anything. Yeah. So Oren is one of those types of guys who just shares. He's also like in the people hire him to raise a bunch of money, and that's his responsibility. It's really just to convince someone else on the other side using words and sometimes pictures to provide and give money. So I would recommend that book on how he does it. I've learned a lot from him. I use a lot of his tactics. And let's see, another book specifically on acquisition. I mean, Buy Then Build is a great one, right? From Walker Dybel. So, I'm trying to think of any other one right now off the top of my head, but I'm drawing a blank.
That's all right.
I have to give you a book list. I actually do have a book list that I try to catalog. It's kind of from my Goodreads. So I'll take a look at that one, and I'll share some after. Cool.
Yeah, that sounds great. Rich, where can people best get a hold of you if they want business or personal advice?
I would say the best way would be LinkedIn, actually. So I'm pretty good by checking my messages or my connections requests. So you can just find me, Rich Sanchez, on LinkedIn. If you need an extra keyword, maybe look up product fit. That's pretty good additional keyword there.
Yeah.
And then you could also go on to productfit.com. That's with an A productfit.com. We actually offer for people who want to get into acquisitions, for people who want to become product managers and eventually make the transition into being like a CEO or an operator of one of my portfolio companies. We're offering some of that kind of mentorship and guidance and training. So it's a good place.
Awesome. Great resources. Rich, can't thank you enough for your time and insights. Really appreciate it. That wraps up today's episode. We hope to have brought you some valuable key takeaways. Most importantly, whatever you learned, take action on it. Apply it to your life. Apply it to your career. Motivation and inspiration only come as a result of taking that first step. So if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe on whichever platform you found the show. You can also follow us on all the major social media platforms or contact us directly at genwhyleaders@gmail.com. That's GENWHY leaders@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Eric Huey, and thanks for listening to the Gen Y Leaders Podcast.